Well, this is Steve Sanson with Veterans in Politics. Jim Jonas is running a little bit behind schedule today. I don't know. Must be the Saturday traffic. But we're here live in studio with Steve Martin, who is a former Marine, former Nevada State Controller, and he is very active when it comes to your taxes. Steve, how you doing?
I am doing great.
You want to give us a little bio about yourself?
Well, let's see. If we go all the way back, I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
When you were born, Steve.
I originally was born in Indiana, so let's skip past that. And enlisted in the Marine Corps. Then I went to OCS. They sent me, and I spent 10 years on active duty and as an infantry officer and platoon commander, and did a lot of other things. Ended up with a top secret clearance, and even made me a computer systems analyst for a while. And then after I got out of the Marine Corps, I went into private business for a while. Ended up doing a number of businesses of my own before I became a CPA.
So what was it like going through OCS, Steve? And what year was that again?
Oh, you really want me to date myself. I went through OCS in 1971.
So that was right during the Vietnam War then?
I ended up in Vietnam, yes. When I left there, I went directly overseas with one short stop in Camp Pendleton. And then from there, I was in Da Nang for a while, and then ended up coming back and going to Norfolk, Virginia, and spending the rest of my, another 3 years with Fleet Marine Force Atlantic.
So Norfolk. Did you see any combat?
Not really, no. I can't claim to, other than rocket attacks and a few things like that. And other than that, I can't really claim much in the way of combat.
So what was your MOS in the Marine Corps?
I was an infantry officer.
Infantry officer. Come on, infantry officer in Da Nang, you didn't see any combat at all, just some rockets shooting over your head?
Well, let me put it this way. I can't claim to have had any, since I didn't get any of the necessary ribbons, so to speak.
But you did see combat.
Well, off and on a little bit here and there. You couldn't drive through downtown Da Nang or any place in Vietnam without somebody trying to shoot at you.
So what brought you in the Marine Corps? Well, why did you even join it, and why that branch?
Why the Marine Corps? It's interesting. I was in Air Force ROTC at Purdue University, mm-hmm. And I dropped one class and ended up eligible for the draft. And my father got a phone call, said, "Hey, Steve's going to be drafted." And I decided that I didn't want to be drafted, so if I was going to do something, I was going to go enlisted in the Marine Corps. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
Wow, so you went from the Marine Corps, you were in Norfolk, Virginia, and I spent a few months there at the amphibious base for embarkation logistics training. And what happened after that?
Well, after I left there, the interesting thing is I say I went through OCS, went through boot camp essentially 4 times because I went through it as an enlisted man, went through OCS once myself, and then I went from Norfolk, Virginia to Quantico, Virginia again, and I put 2 platoons of lieutenants through and commissioned 2 platoons of lieutenants, and then I went to what they call the Amphibious Warfare School, which was one of the advanced level schools for captains and majors. So
how was life going through OCS? Did they beat you up in there or what?
I would say it's a lot like you go through enlisted boot camp, although the interesting thing is that all the sergeants and staff sergeants and all the enlisted men know that eventually they might end up saluting you. So they're a little bit more laid back on things. But in general, the physical aspects are all the same.
So it's not like that movie Officer and a Gentleman?
Not hardly. In fact, the only comparison I could even make with that probably is the fact that they shave your head when you get there.
So how did you being in the Marine Corps affect you today?
Well, I think what you learn in the Marine Corps, and it's actually part of the development. You end up going out and finding out that you can really do a whole lot more than what you expected you'd ever be able to do. It gives you a maturity, and especially when I went from enlisted man to an officer, and suddenly I had all this responsibility. And I said, you guys are trusting me as second lieutenant with all this responsibility, and you adapt to it. And I learned clear back then. I was 20 years old when I got a commission, and
20.
I was one of the youngest they'd ever commissioned.
And you were infantry officer in Da Nang at 20 years old?
Yes.
How many troops were you commanding?
In my particular case, I had just a number of enlisted men working for me as such, but on occasion we'd go out with the security platoons, and I would stand in for some of the people there, and you'd have about 40 people.
So what was your highest enlisted rank there under your control?
I actually left boot camp, and since they had said, well, we might send you to OCS, I was actually a meritorious PFC out of boot camp, and I was discharged as a sergeant 18 months later.
You lost me, Steve. You mean you discharged as a sergeant?
Somehow or other, I skipped everything in between, and when I went to OCS, they automatically promoted me to sergeant. So I got a discharge as a sergeant when I got a commission. Now, if I had not made it through OCS, I probably would have gone back and been,
But how did that happen? How did you get discharged as a sergeant when you're already an officer?
Well, no. When you go through to OCS as an enlisted man, you actually go to OCS as a sergeant, E5, and you're paid as an E5. And then, in that case, after you get a commission, then that doesn't happen until the end of the entire process. And then some people don't make it.
So you joined the Marine Corps as an enlisted man, not as an officer.
Correct. I was an enlisted man for 18 months before I even went to OCS.
And they just said go to OCS?
No, they actually asked for. I guess they needed lieutenants at the time in Vietnam, so they said anybody want to, and they said you had high enough scores on your test. Let's send you to OCS.
But don't you need a bachelor's to go to OCS, or it wasn't like that back then?
Back then you didn't have to. Now
okay.
You do.
Wow, that's interesting.
I actually ended up finishing my bachelor's degree in Norfolk, Virginia, when I was stationed there for 3 years. Finished it at nights, and then I did the same thing when I got my master's degree in accounting a number of years later.
So what was your educational background when you became an officer?
I actually had 2 years of engineering at Purdue University is all I had.
Okay. So what was the highest rank you were commanding in Da Nang?
In Da Nang, I was a first lieutenant.
No, the rank that you were commanding, enlisted rank.
Oh, the enlisted man, I had a master sergeant.
So you were given a master sergeant orders?
Absolutely.
And how old was the master sergeant?
At that time, I thought he was ancient, but now I look back and he's not so old.
And you were 20 years old?
Yep.
He didn't slap you across your head?
We had a good relationship.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, let's take a commercial break, and we'll be back with Steve Martin. This is Steve Sanson, and Jim Jonas has joined us, so we'll be back with Jim Jonas as well. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
We're back. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics, and we have Steve Martin live in studio. We're going to do a rant at the end of the show since Jim Jonas wasn't here. And does it sound good for you, Jim?
Sounds good for me. Yeah, sorry, I was running a little late.
Yeah, Jim was running late, folks. Don't do that, okay? Because
it's actually kind of rude, so I want to apologize to the listeners.
Yeah. Very rude. Isn't that right, Steve?
Absolutely.
And, of course, Steve Sanson never runs late. So
Never.
Absolutely no, he was here at least 3 minutes before start time.
3 minutes before start time, yes. Good. Well, we have Steve Martin, He is the former state controller. Let's talk a little bit about that, Steve. How did you get into that position, and what got you into politics?
In politics in general, I actually moved to Nevada in 1999, and when I moved here, I made a conscious decision, as a Marine, trying to achieve things, and as you go along in life, and I said I'm going to get involved in politics. So I, being a CPA, said, hey, started talking to a few people, and somebody said, hey, would you like to be the treasurer for some campaign? And so I met with a number of different people, and I was talking with them. And ultimately, what I ended up doing, it was the assistant treasurer for the state Republican Party, and did that for a short period of time, about a year. And then, due to circumstances, the elected treasurer, had to resign, and he ended up asking me if I would take over as the state treasurer for the state Republican Party. And this is strictly a volunteer type position, and I got to know people around the state, including Governor Gwynn. So in 2006, if you recall, Kathy Augustine was murdered earlier that year. And when that happened, I received a phone call from him that day, and would I be interested in being the state controller to finish out her term for the rest of 2006.
So, Steve, let me ask you this question. As a former Marine, and we all know that in the military, especially the Marine Corps, it's all about honor, sacrifice, duty, country. Politics isn't exactly that way. So how have you made that transformation to be able to deal with, I'll just put it bluntly, some of the scoundrels that run around in politics?
Well, you just try and expose those scoundrels, and it's one of the things that happens. And I'll relate to Commissioner Woodbury, who was a commissioner for a long time, and I actually heard him as he was making a farewell speech comment one time that he'd served with 27 different commissioners, and only 7 of them had gone to jail. And he sort of made a joke about it, but it's serious.
Yeah.
And things like that do happen. If people take graft, then they need to go down for it. It's that simple. And I think if people I think what goes around comes around, so to speak. And if you're that type of person, it's eventually catch up to you.
So, Steve, once you've obviously been involved in politics. So what I was told when I first ran for the state legislature, they said the one thing you need to avoid, Jim, is don't get engrossed into the system, because you are coming in with good intentions, and then it all becomes about winning. And whatever it takes to win, that's what you do. And they told me avoid that. So what have you done to avoid stuff like that?
Well, I through the years, one of the things I don't want to say don't get engrossed in the system, and then maybe you're talking about the state Republican Party or some of the other, might be the Democratic Party or whatever. I think you can be involved, and I looked at it this way from the standpoint that as the state treasurer, I got to know people around the state, and that was a key thing for laying the groundwork for possibly running for office. And the same thing applies, having been, if I hadn't known Governor Gwynn and been involved in politics, I probably would not even been asked to take that position. And subsequent to that, I even was appointed in 2009 to the State Board of Finance. And I think you, as a CPA, you have to be involved. I chose to be involved that way. And I think we try and bring a higher standard, shall we say, to the various different offices that you're looking at.
So as a CPA, you've gotten the opportunity to look at some of the books. Doesn't it appall you at the bookkeeping that takes place in government?
Absolutely. In fact, let me just relate one quick story to you. When I was appointed state controller, as a CPA, one of the first things you go out and look at is a backup system for the computers.
Right.
Believe it or not, the state did not have one that was working.
Huh.
And one of the things that I did in the short period of time, less than a year, that I had as state controller was actually to get it in the budget and put through or push through, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. I mean, I didn't make any friends trying to do that because essentially it was already in the budget to do it, but it had been in the budget for 5 years and it hadn't gotten done. So I told my office, I said, we're just going to do it. We're going to do it in-house, and we'll do it ourselves for the most part. The equipment that we needed ended up costing about $500,000, but essentially what we had and what was pushed through the legislature was a backup system that was in Las Vegas as opposed to one that was a mile from the Capitol in the old Armory, and literally it was a system that they had not paid the software licenses, so it didn't even work. So those are some things that you try and bring to the professional part of the job.
Okay.
But you can go out and ask any state employee for the most part, and they'll tell you where the dollars are that are being wasted.
When you were controller, Stephen, and you ran for that post, what was your percentage? What did you lose by?
I lost by a little over 6,000 votes.
Did they have none of these candidates on the ballot that time?
Yes, they did.
And what was that score?
30,000 votes.
So, in your perspective, do you think that we should do away with none of these candidates?
I think it's a detriment, yes, and I'll tell you why. And if you look at it from this standpoint, if you look down the ballot, and let's just look at the constitutional offices, if you look at the governor's race, you'll see, say, 7,000 or 8,000. Then you go to the next race, the lieutenant governor's race and the secretary of state's race. That number grows to 18,000 to 20,000. And when you get down to the last few races, which are the treasurer's race, the controller's race, and the attorney general's race, that number can be as high as 31,000, which is what I saw in 2006. And the problem with that is that people don't have to make a decision, and I think since they don't know some of the candidates, and let's face it, down ballot
You have
races,
a popular name, though, Steve Martin.
Well,
everybody knows Steve Martin.
Everybody, and then there may be some people who look at it and say, "Hey, we don't need a comedian as a state treasurer, too." So, even though they recognize the name, you never know how it's going to turn out or what it will be.
And in the treasurer's race, what was the results for that race? The last election you ran in?
I'll be honest with you, I have not even looked at it. At 6:00 the morning after I lost that election, I was working on client work, my CPA business, trying to catch up, and I've been trying to catch up ever since. My campaign people looked at it, and I said, if there's anything of interest, if you can tell me why I lost that race and didn't win, let me know. And they said, we still haven't figured it out.
So let me ask you something. Why are you running for these state races? What pushed you? What drove you into running for these races?
Well, probably the biggest factor in this race was the fact that I had been appointed in 2009 to the State Board of Finance. The State Board of Finance works closely with the Treasurer's Office. And I just saw so many things that I didn't think were being done professional. We had a treasurer who was a lawyer. We reelected that same lawyer. And I don't think in that particular office that we need, that I think we do need somebody that is professional, has the financial background, not somebody that has a legal background.
Almost everybody that ran on the Republican ticket, that ran for a constitutional seat, had some type of baggage, except for you.
Yes.
What do you think that is?
Anybody can sign up for any of the races. And if you go back and let's talk about one of the primaries.
You're the only one that didn't have any baggage. I mean, I haven't heard any negative thing about you. I mean, the Attorney General's race, I heard negative. The governor's race, I heard negative. The Secretary of State race, I've heard negative. You nothing. Why is that?
Because I'm a CPA and I keep my my nose clean. No, I would not. If I had baggage, I wouldn't run for an office because it's all of this is going to come out, and you have to be realistic, I think, in what your chances are.
So, Steve, let me ask you on that one. So, do you think that someone that does have baggage shouldn't run? I mean, wouldn't that really limit the candidates ultimately?
I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but they have to be realistic, and I think that's one of the things that when you look at it, depends on what it is. I mean, sometimes money will buy you a way out will buy you the votes that you need if you get your name out there more than the other person. It's not always the best candidate. I don't think that always wins.
So, Steve, let me ask you a follow-up question on that then. What would you consider to be something that a candidate might have done in the past that would, like a litmus test, so to speak? Give me an example of something that a candidate did and that would automatically disqualify them to run for office.
Well, let's look at it from the other way around. When you're talking about so many different things, and let's say somebody had a DUI when they were 18 or 19 or 20 years old.
Right.
And let's say they're now 40 or 45, 50. I mean, it's 20 or 30 years ago. Are we going to hold that against them? I think the answer there is no. Although when campaigns get down and dirty,
Yeah.
that the fact that you had a DUI 20 years ago will be brought up.
Well, it'll come back to hurt you, obviously, but I mean, would you consider that? So, if someone had a DUI 20 years prior, should they just not even consider running?
No, I don't think that. Absolutely, I don't think that's a disqualifier. I think
Okay.
if you look, if there's nothing in your immediate past or something that well, let's say if I was running for some financial position and I had just ended up filing bankruptcy,
Right.
something like that, I think you'd have to look at it and say, is it really a smart move? Can I really win? Will the people really trust me
Yeah.
from that standpoint?
Okay.
Well, let's take a commercial break, and we'll be right back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. We'll return momentarily with Steve Martin.
Hello, my name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
Well, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Live in studio, Steve Martin. Steve, tell us a little bit about your profession. What do you do? CPA, Certified Public Accountant. What is that?
Well, essentially, and let me just kind of define what my practice is in addition to being a CPA. Certified Public Accountant. Half of my business is tax and audit work. In other words, I will prepare taxes, and in my case, I don't do that many individual tax returns, mostly businesses, and I'll also go out and audit those businesses. I look at their financials and basically say, are they meeting the requirements that they have to with regards to financial statements? That's half of my practice. That's kind of the boring half. The other part is the litigation work that I do. And when I say litigation work, I'm also a certified fraud examiner, certified valuation analyst. And in those two capacities, one, I have done some work for the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, to go out and investigate fraud, stock fraud. Or I might even be retained by another business to go in and look at and develop a case for fraud. Say they had an employee that stole money. Or I might even be doing some work for, say, a government entity, a county or something like that thinks that they had money misappropriated. And essentially I put together a case that they can take to court. Same thing with the other part of my business, which is valuation work. I'll go out, I'll look at a business and say, what is this business worth? From a valuation standpoint, they might be trying to sell the business. They might be having to prepare tax returns for an estate purposes. Somebody passed away, the owner passed away, and he's going to pass it on to his heirs. How much is the business worth? All that has to be determined so that the IRS can tax it.
So, Steve, based on that, my question to you is, we're hearing this debate now up on Capitol Hill about should we extend the Bush tax cuts? Should we make them permanent? What's your feeling on that?
I absolutely think that we need to make them permanent, and I'll tell you why. I talk to businesses day in and day out. That's what I do, and I give advice to businesses. And right now, people ask me, okay, what should I do in tax planning for next year? And I have to say, I don't know.
Right.
Because none of us do, because we don't know what the taxes are going to be. But having said that, if you look at what is coming down the pike for businesses, potentially tax increases for a business owner, the unemployment rate just went up. you factor in all that, and then you ask them, can you afford another tax increase from the state of Nevada? And if you're a business owner, what are you going to say? Well, do I hire that employee knowing that I've got these taxes coming in, or do I hold back and as was said in a discussion yesterday that I was having, one individual, a business owner, said, well, if I need one person, I'm not going to hire him. If I need two, I'll think about it. If I need three, maybe. He says, by the time I get to 5, I know that I need those employees. He said, so I'll maybe go hire 1 or 2, given the fact that I have no idea what my finances are going to be for the next couple of years.
So when this is the argument that I hear on TV all the time, that most individual small business owners actually pay taxes on the individual level. In other words, anyone under $250,000, a lot of those individuals are actually small business owners. I mean, just explain to me a little bit more about what that entails.
Well, when you structure, let's take a corporation, for instance, because that's the easiest one to demonstrate it. If I'm a big corporation like a Walmart or somebody like that, I'm taxed on a corporate level. If I'm a small business, what I'll usually set up is what's called an S Corp, a small business corporation.
Right.
And what happens there is any profits that I have in the business flow directly through to my personal tax return. I don't pay corporate income tax on the corporate level. I pay them on the individual level. So let's say I make $100,000 profit in the business. And let's say on the same hand, I'm a successful businessman with I pay myself a salary of $75,000, $100,000. Well, suddenly I'm in the $200,000 bracket,
right?
And it's not unusual for a small business to make $100,000 profit, given the risk that they take. And we're talking about businesses that might make, do $1 million in business a year. They're taking all the risks. They have all the stuff that they have to build up, and they have to get ready to do the next level that they're going to take the business to. So risk versus reward. They're the ones that taking all the risk.
So why do you think there's such a hunger, especially on the not all Democrats, but especially the Nancy Pelosi Democrats? I'll clarify exactly what I'm talking about. So why is there such a hunger? They always have this Robin Hood mentality that they want to take from the rich and distribute that wealth to the poor. Is there any real way that government could do that?
Well, I don't think you can even ask the question, can they do it? They are doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's take, for instance, and this is a conversation that I had just before the election day. And I had it with a Democrat. I won't mention any name because he's a well-known Democrat. And he was actually trying to develop a business to support businesses and to do things that the businesses, from a tax standpoint, really needed to do. And one of the discussions we got into after he pointed out all the things that, from a tax standpoint, that he thought we needed for businesses, I said, how are you a Democrat? I mean, it makes no sense. And that was the case. Small business people, I think, and I think this is a big factor for anybody out there. Let's take somebody who lays bricks. How many people do you know that have started out laying bricks and ultimately own the company? Or they go out and they start their own company. Suddenly the shoe's on the other foot. And now they're wanting to keep the taxes down because that's how they're going to make money. That's how they're going to be able to hire more employees. That's how they're going to be able to expand, because it takes capital to run a business, and it takes capital to expand. You've got those accounts receivable, people who owe you money. That's a factor out there. You owe the bank money. You've got payroll to make. All these requirements that you have as a small businessman, you have to set money aside. I know too many business people right now that over the last couple of years have essentially, in order to save their business, they've pulled money out of their savings. They've liquidated totally their 401k, all the retirement plans, and still the business failed.
So, Steve, what do you think? I mean, we have the highest unemployment in the nation here in the state of Nevada. What can we do to spur growth? I mean, just what could we do?
Well, the only thing that's going to, first of all, what we need to do is say no increased taxes. on both a federal and a state level so that businesses can plan.
Right.
If I know for the next 5 or 10 years what my tax ramifications are going to be, then I can start planning.
Yeah.
Until I know that, I don't know whether we're going to have capital gains tax. I don't know whether my tax rate's going to go from 15 to 30%. I have no idea. So all those factors have to be laid out. Then I think if everybody in the state legislature and everybody in the constitutional officers start being proactive about bringing business to Nevada.
So, Steve, how do you promote your business? How do people know about you?
I do a lot of networking from the standpoint of the CPA business as far as the tax and audits. I pass out a lot, just like I did when I was a candidate. I pass out a lot of cards, and I've got a good reputation. So
you don't actually do any advertisement?
I don't do. I've tried the various different. I've done some in a long time ago. Did some radio advertising. I've done some advertising in the way of mail outs. But I found that the best way that I can get the word out is through myself being out meeting people, and then those people ultimately need a new accountant.
So let me try to see if I could get this straight. You actually go to businesses and appraise the business, and you tell the owner what the business is worth, so he can go ahead and sell it, put it up for sale.
He would probably retain me if he's getting ready to sell it and wants to know what the business is worth and wants to know what it's going to be sold for. Although, having said that, I probably do a lot more with regards to estates, because everybody, when somebody passes away and if they have a business, they're going to have it valued for estate tax purposes.
So do you work with the public administrator's office on that?
No. Never have.
Would you think that'd be something you probably want to reach out to?
It's possible. I don't know. I'd have to go back and actually see what the level is for much of the people who end up in the public administrator's office.
And you
would know that better than me.
And you mentioned that I was with the public administrator a couple of days ago. 2 days ago, actually. You also mentioned that you take a look at, like you do loss prevention, correct? Look at the fraud or any kind of criminal activities going on in the business.
Correct, yes.
Have you reached out to the Attorney General's office to see if you could probably drum up some business that way?
The most of the work, they have their own internal investigators, although I have one case that I'm working on now that may be referred to them once I'm finished with my analysis.
Because it sounds like you have a very, very unique business out there, because your business I really haven't really heard of too much.
Well, there's a number of people out there that doing much of that I do.
How many in the state of Nevada that's licensed to do what you do?
Well, I actually haven't counted it in the last couple of years, but if you go back, say 3 years, I actually took a look to see how many people were both a CPA, a certified fraud examiner, certified valuation analyst, and there were only 10. 10 in the state of Nevada.
Do what you do.
Well, 10 that had those certifications. Now, there are there's quite a number of people that do the valuation work but don't do the fraud work. There's
right.
quite a few people that do the fraud work but don't do the other part. Then you've got all the CPA firms, for the most part, do tax and audits.
And you also do that.
I do that. I have a number of clients that I retain from year to year.
So in like February, March, April time frame, you also do people's taxes?
Correct.
Oh, interesting. Well, let's take a commercial break. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics, and we'll return momentarily with Steve Martin.
My name is Steve Sanson. I'm the president of Veterans in Politics International. This country and state are in trouble with budget cuts, unemployment, foreclosures, teacher shortage, dropout rates, terrorism, and a loss of military service members. The outcome of this election will profoundly affect families, both military and non-military. Military men and women are dying for other countries to have the right to vote. As a former member of the United States Marine Corps and the Army, I know how important it is to keep the voters informed. Log on to the website veteransinpolitics.com. All Americans of voting age need to not only vote, but research your choices. The Veterans in Politics organization has taken a proactive approach to supporting candidates who will have the courage to protect all of our freedoms and our Constitution. Visit our website at veteransinpolitics.com. Don't just talk about who you support. Research your choices and vote.
Hi, this is Chuck Ann Baker, the editor of the Veterans Reporter newspaper, the only newspaper in Nevada for veterans and their families. Pick up your free copies at most VA offices, most libraries, at the American Legion, the VFW, the DAV, and hundreds of other locations. We also produce the Veterans Reporter radio show every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m., KLAV Radio, AM 1230, and we stream it live, www.klav1230am.com. This is Chuck Ann Baker for the Veterans Reporter newspaper.
Hi, I'm Travis Barrick, the Republican nominee for Attorney General, and I approve this message. Brian Krolicki received over 122,000 votes in the June primary, more than anybody else on the ballot. The lawsuit against him by Ms. Masta was a political witch hunt where she wasted thousands of your dollars. She has disgraced the office of Attorney General by being a partisan hack of Harry Reid, and their socialist agenda is too radical for Nevada. You have the right to expect better of your Attorney General, and I have the integrity to deliver on that expectation. Go to travisberrick.com to learn more about me and my campaign.
Well, we're back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones with Veterans in Politics, and I just we want to apologize, Jim, for still having those outdated political commercials still running, but we haven't had any new ones. And you listeners out there, if you want to advertise on our show, please give us a call, 702-283-8088, and we could probably do something for you. So, Mr. Martin, are you still going to be involved in politics?
Absolutely. There's actually so much that still needs to be done out there. And when I identified issues as a member of the State Board of Finance, those issues didn't go away. They were not just campaign issues. There's still issues out there that I need to go back and want to try and fix. I just have to do it from the outside as opposed to the inside.
So what issues out there you think that we need to fix?
Well, let's take a look just at the budget. One of the things that I wanted to do was to put the checkbook online. And you and I talked about it here on your show. What do we get from putting the checkbook online? Well, right now, from an audit standpoint, we've got the Legislative Council Bureau with about 10 or 15 auditors, and we've got the internal audit staff with another 10 or 15. So we got 30 people looking at the various different offices, and they get to each constitutional office about every 7 years. So that's when they look at it. So let's put it online, and then anybody who has a question that wants to look at something and wants to see where money's being spent, they can go online, look up by vendor how the money's spent.
You know, Steve, I agree 100% on that. However, the one question I've always thought to myself when we get this transparency, put it online, sounds good, but how many people are actually going to take the time to actually go to the proper website and look this up?
How many people? The state of Missouri and the state of Texas both have had pretty good results, and even I, as a citizen, and that's what I am. I can go online if there's something that I'm concerned about, and I want to see how a legislator, or whether there's a connection between a legislator and some other information, or an individual who works in government in another entity. I can do that.
Well, one of the things, Steve, that's always frustrated me about people, and I get into these conversations around the dinner table or whatever, that people don't seem to realize that taxes are their money. So they don't take the time to do this stuff, and that's what frustrates me. And they say they want transparency in government, but they're not holding government accountable. They complain a lot, but they wouldn't take the time to actually go online and look this stuff up. And to be honest, I get made fun of a lot. They're like, oh, you're just, you're a dork or whatever. You go on and you look this stuff up. I'm like, well, if I'm paying for it, I want to know where that money's going. How do we inspire the public to have that same mentality? That taxes it's not government money. It's your money.
Well, you're never going to get everybody involved.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
take a look at the election. You know, we've got 2 million, 2.5 million people in the state. How many turned out to vote this last time around?
Right.
So what you got to essentially ask is, what do we need to do to get the word out? And what do we need to do to have things that and make people interested?
Yeah. So people like you are out there to inform the people. What more can we do?
Well, I think what we have to do is let our legislative people do their job, but each of those legislative people, they represent a certain district, and we have to be mindful of what they're doing. And there's enough people out there that are interested. If somebody has an interest in attending a group, there's plenty of groups out there that are looking at the different issues, and they can get involved and stay involved.
What would your advice to? So let's say somebody who's actually really passionate about it, what would be the first place they could go to get involved?
Well, from my standpoint, I look at NPRI, Nevada Policy Research Institute. They're one of the good people one of the good groups that is always looking at various different issues. It's simple and easy to get on their website and get on their distribution list.
Okay.
That's just one example.
What bills do you want to see pass in this next legislative session?
To be honest, in the last 2 weeks, I've been working on my honey-do list since the election, and I haven't had a chance to look at all the different bills that are out there. I'm going to have a meeting here in the next couple of weeks with a number of different legislative people.
So Gail's been keeping you busy?
She has been keeping me very busy. She said she had a year-long list.
A year-long
list from the time I started running. So that's what I've been working on.
So you're not going to leave your house anytime soon. How do you even get here?
Well, I have a number of different projects that are sitting dormant while I'm here on the show with you, and I will go back to them when I get back. But the good part about it is that I also have time now that I don't have to worry about going to Carson City and finding a place to live up in Carson City. I have 2 Nevada-born and bred Mustangs, the horse type, and I'm getting a lot more time to spend with them.
So, are you planning to run for another elected seat?
At the moment, I don't think I have my wife's permission to do so. After 38 years, I will bow to her, and if she doesn't agree with me running again, I won't. I don't have any intentions. I'm not looking at any.
Anybody approached you?
No, and frankly, I'm not interested. I'm working on my CPA business, rebuilding that, and getting things going there.
Well, and plus you have a year-long honey-to-do list, so that's going to take you a while.
It will take me a while. I didn't make the promise this time that I did once before. I told my wife that I wouldn't get heavily involved in any groups for 2 years so I could devote time to her. But while I'm thinking about it, let me also thank everybody who did vote for me out there. I had a lot of good support out there and a lot of people who worked very hard on my campaign around the state, so I like to thank them.
You remember Ed Hamilton as Ed Mr. Clean Hamilton? Or are you going to be running as Steve Squeaky Clean Martin?
No, I'll just run. It's too bad I can't put CPA after my name on the ballot. But
what do you think that would help?
Well, it depends on what office you're running for. I think people respect CPAs, especially when you're running for an office like the state treasurer.
So how could people get a hold of you, Steve?
The easiest way to get information about me, my firm, is to look at my website, which is stevemartincpa.us. That's STEVEMARTIN.us, or send me an email at steve@stevemartincpa.us. All the phone numbers are listed there.
Anything else you want to get out to the people that are listening?
I would just say this, for all those people who were out there working very hard to get people elected, they were elected by you to do work for you, and they need to follow up and not just say, okay, we got them elected, now let's let them continue to march like they want to. Let's hold them accountable and make sure that they do the job that we wanted them to do.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you for coming on the show.
I have enjoyed it tremendously.
Well, this is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas of Veterans in Politics, and we'll be back momentarily with our rants.
Veterans in Politics International. The Veterans in Politics mission is to teach, educate, organize,
and awaken our veterans and their families to select, support, and vote intelligently for a better world and to protect ourselves from our own government and a culture of corruption and to be the political voice for those and other groups that do not have one. Remember, 1 in 6 Nevadans are vets.
There are too many homeless vets. One more program are needed at the VA. Every veteran service organization post should adopt a local homeless veteran.
Funding of VA medical centers is inadequate, and building a VA hospital in Southern Nevada is moving at a slow pace. The budget has been flatlined for too many years. The VA is too quick to deny claims and too slow to help veterans gather records in support of claims.
Local politicians ignore veterans and their issues. They perceive a lack of organization among their local veterans and that it won't hurt them at election time. Veterans too often vote party, not veterans issues. All veterans should vote in every election.
Local news media give inadequate coverage to local veteran issues and events. You must send your letters to the editor and voice your concerns.
Please contact your members of Congress and Senate and urge them to co-sponsor key legislation in supporting our veterans. Please support the Veterans in Politics. To get more information, go online to www.veteransinpolitics.com. Support your local veteran groups.
What are you doing online? Checking out the Belly Dance Company. Where's it at? BackToBelly.com. That's right. We work our arms. We work our ass. We work so hard and have a blast. No matter what your favorite size from Belly Dance, you'll be surprised. For cost schedule and location, log on to BackToBelly.com.
Well, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jones of Veterans in Politics. Jim, what's going on with TSA? Touching people, putting their hands between their legs, grabbing on the chest, all this groping going on. What's going on with TSA?
I don't know. I've been hearing a lot about it lately. That's kind of...
Some people might get excited if they do too much. What are they going to do?
Well, I think part of the problem is that post-September 11th, we just got... the whole country was obviously in fear, and they should have been, right? Because there was a lot of things that we could have done that we weren't doing. So it's an overreach. I think that, just in general, I find it disturbing that they're, patting down two-year-old babies.
They're patting them down hard, worse than cops when they pat people down.
Yeah.
They said that I was listening to the president today, and he was saying that the reason for that is that there are items that the metal detectors are not picking up.
So the answer is either get better metal detectors, or why don't we go the air out?
But did
route?
you hear about what that? There's a sheriff in San Francisco, and he dispatched his deputies to go to the airport to make sure that the TSAs are not groping people, because apparently it's a felony over there. And he said that he would arrest them on the spot if they start to grope people. But I don't understand, if you're going to pat people down in that extreme, isn't that part of the groping process? So you're going to arrest them for doing their job if they got orders to do that? I don't know. And he also mentioned that the district attorney is ready to prosecute as well. So he got the DA on his side. So,
well, now the TSA is federal. So can local agencies actually enforce that law?
I don't know. This is what I'm reading.
Yeah, because as far as I understand the law, and I'm not an attorney by any means, the federal government supersedes local officials. So
that's true. You know what? If I'm going to get pat down, I don't want some big, fat, hairy guy coming to touch up on me. When they put a nice looking girl come pat me down all she wants, and I'll be okay with that. You know what I mean? Or I go in a room and I'll just strip and just say, "Hey, here I am in my glory," and I'll be done. What do you think about that? You want some big hairy man to come and put their hand between your legs and all that?
No, actually,
pinch on your nipples. You don't know what they're doing.
Actually, what I want to see is profiling at the airports.
Profiling? Isn't profiling illegal?
Well, it shouldn't be.
I thought profiling was part of the discriminatory process. When you're like Mike Davison, when he came, or John Ralston.
Right.
I think what cost him the election, he said that he could look at somebody and he could tell if they're a pedophile or not.
Oh, well, let me clarify what I mean by, let me clarify.
Come on now.
Okay, let me clarify.
He lost because of that remark.
Okay, hold on a second, Steve. Let me clarify. What I mean by profiling is doing background searches. So someone comes up, we have all this technology now, and someone comes up as a potential terrorist threat.
How do they look? If I put a towel on my head and I had a big long beard, I'm a terrorist
That's
suspect?
nothing to do with looks. It's your travel history. Get pulled aside like they do in Israel. Get pulled aside and actually do an interview with that individual. Ask them, why are you here? Where are you going? So if somebody just all of a sudden decides they're going to pay cash for a ticket that day, a one-way trip,
so
that's a red flag.
You're saying that there have to be some computer system right there at the security checkpoint so the TSA could look up that person right away?
Yes.
That instead of groping on them?
Yeah. I think that'd work a lot better.
You think so?
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think about these what do you think about these elections that just came in the system? We talked a little bit about that. Any changes or anything you view differently or anything like that?
No, actually, I found the election to some pundits take it a little differently, but I look at it as it was actually the American people were upset with the direction of the Obama presidency.
Because a lot of people are conceding in a whole bunch of different states
Yeah.
that haven't been counted on November 2nd.
Oh, that's because they didn't. Obviously, they must have talked to someone and didn't think they had a chance to win.
Yeah. You have any rants?
No, not really any rants. I did find that I just got finished today reading President Bush's Decision Points book. Found it very interesting. A lot of stuff I already knew, through the news and stuff, but I found he came across a lot more deliberate in his decision-making and a lot more clear than I think a lot of people thought he was.
Hey, did you listen to the show last week? That was the first time neither one of us showed up.
Yeah. No, actually, I didn't get a chance to listen to it.
I was listening to it on my phone, by the way. They got that doggone thing fixed. You can listen to it on your phone now. So you listeners out there, you could listen to our show live on your phone. But anyways, it was Dr. Fry, who is a Democrat, and he's a psychiatrist who's running against John Ensign in 2011.
I think a lot of Democrats need psychiatrists after the last election.
But he's also author of 25 Reasons We Should Legalize Drugs. Wow. And he did this statistic on how Amsterdam has an 8% dropout rate, and their drugs are all legal, and how the United States has anywhere between a 55 to 60% dropout rates, and our drugs are illegal.
Right.
So, explain that.
Well,
Amsterdam knows something we don't.
Well, I would like to know what Amsterdam's GDP is. It's a heck of a lot less than ours.
He also talked about how expensive it is to build prisons than it is to build schools.
Yeah.
But I think marijuana should be legal. I think so.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
No, maybe we should talk about that one day. We should probably put Irma on the show, our board operator, and have her chime in on the marijuana conversation. She'd probably be on my side, I think.
Well, so you want my take on the marijuana thing?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's like saying, all right, the speed limit's 55, but we'll let you go 65, right?
Come on, people that are on weed
gateway.
Follow the speed limit.
It's gateway.
I haven't heard anybody on weed speeding. I heard people on alcohol speeding.
Hey, let's be honest. They probably drive under the speed limit.
People on weed look at the speed limit and said, oh, my God, it's 65. I'm doing 67. I better slow down. People on alcohol be like, yeah, 65, 75, 85, who cares? Is that the po-po behind me? Oh, crap, they got me now. See, people on weed are much more slower, and they're much more, they kind of more paranoid than people that have been drinking. The people that have been drinking is not paranoid.
I don't advocate either, smoking or drinking.
No, I think marijuana should be legal, and that's
we'll
my
agree
rant
to
for the
disagree.
day. Well, this is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas. Until next week with Veterans in Politics.